According to the World Health Organization, over 1 billion people, who amount for 15% of the world's population, have some form of disabilities, with higher prevalence in developing countries. In Nigeria, the National Population Commission estimates that no fewer than 19 million people are living with disabilities. Unfortunately, these special citizens face discrimination and barriers that restrict them from participating in the society on an equal capacity with other citizens. To prohibit the unfair treatment, the National Disability Rights Bill was presented to the National Assembly, but sadly, it later turned out to be a long, tedious journey to approval.
The great Nigerian women with disabilities!
Many civil society organizations like the Center for Citizens with Disabilities rallied for the passage of the bill, but with no success with presidential assent. Not given up, the CCD in 2014, with support from Open Society Initiative for West Africa, continued its campaign for the passage. It eventually happened.
We must commend Senator David Mark and the Speaker of House of Representatives, Right Honorable Aminu Tamboa, for their consistency in ensuring that even though the executive is paying lip service to issues of disability, they reaffirm that the rights of people with disabilities must be enshrined as a way of life here in Nigeria. We are looking at, right now, the bill is undergoing what they call cleansing for transmission to President Goodluck Jonathan. And I want to use this opportunity to request the clerk of the National Assembly to take appropriate steps to dispatch the disability bill to the President for his assent.
With minimum advocacy, this bill will be signed into law even before February.
Well, what happened last time happened again. The bill wasn't assented to. Then President Goodluck Jonathan refused to sign it into law in 2015, dealing a heavy blow to PWDs. After power changed hands later in the same year, the CCD was determined to try again with another administration under President Muhammadu Buhari. The executive director of the CCD, David Anyele, led a delegation to meet with the immediate past Senate President Bukola Saraki on March 6, 2016, and got the assurance that it was going to be passed as soon as possible. True to his word, the National Disability Bill was passed by the House of Representatives on June 9th, and the Senate did same on July the 13th, same year, just 4 months after that meeting.
Is read the third time and passed.
The Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Bill was passed by the 6th and 7th Assembly, but was not assented to by the then President. Senators are, however, optimistic that President Muhammadu Buhari will this time around assent to the bill due to the fact that his government has provision to improve the welfare of the people.
PWDs waited with bated breath for the news of the presidential assent, but it didn't happen. They ended up holding their breath for a very long time. This was because no one could trace the whereabouts of the bill between December 6, 2016 and December 5, 2017.
As I speak to you, the 8th Senate of the Nigerian National Assembly is struggling to transmit the disability bill to Mr. President for his assent.
Unfortunately, the bill has suffered so many setbacks for the past 18 years since the struggle for a disability bill started. So we're here today to protest at the National Assembly to ensure that the bill that they have passed since April is immediately transmitted to the President for assent.
We will do everything possible within the stipulated time you have given to ensure that Mr. President has a copy of this bill. And I'm very sure the President is friendly to people living with disabilities.
Yes.
And you can see how he has also given a space for people living with disability to be represented in his government.
Yes.
You are not asking for sympathy. No, you are asking that whatever is being done to those who are able are also extended to those who are disabled. And I can assure you, the Senate will do exactly that.
While waiting for the National Assembly to return from recess, the CCD continued with advocacy efforts and media engagement. Members of the group paid a courtesy visit to the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development to seek the support of the ministry.
And we saw some places that need brushing, and we advised Mr. President, the bill as approved has been taken back to the National Assembly for dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's as observed by the Attorney General and my ministry, and very soon, by the grace of God, it will be taken back finally to Mr. President for assent.
CCD took its campaign for the passage of the bill out of Nigeria by participating in the Global Disability Summit held in London. Back home, lobbying efforts of members of the rights group paid off. They discovered that drafting gaps on the bill was an obstacle to transmitting the bill to the president for assent. The task ahead was clear, and there was no time to waste. The bill later suffered another setback after the National Assembly returned from a long recess on October 9, 2018. The issue of the National Disability Bill was no longer a priority for the lawmakers. The CCD mobilized coalition of disability organizations the next day for a peaceful protest. Well, that act proved to be effective, because the following week, the disability bill was raised on the floor of the National Assembly. Efforts of the CCD could no longer be ignored in the country. It wasn't a surprise when the executive director, Mr. Anyele, was invited to the candidate town hall meeting with the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, President Muhammadu Buhari.
So since we're talking about disability, there was a question asked about a bill that was transmitted to you, the disability bill, which you have not signed.
I'm not aware of that.
It's been returned?
No.
We are calling on President Muhammadu Buhari to sign the disability bill without further delay, to reduce the suffering of people with disabilities in this country, to reduce the agony of women with disabilities who have been discriminated around Nigeria. We are calling on President Muhammadu Buhari to honor Nigerian Paralympians who go to other countries of the world to win medals.
The denial compelled the CCD to mobilize the coalition of disability organizations for another protest to demand for the urgent assent of the President on the National Disability Rights Bill on January 17, 2019, with the participation of Chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Odinkalu.
You're going to the bank to withdraw your money. The banks should stay away because they don't think somebody who is blind or who cannot walk can keep money in a bank. Now, you go to a cash point. The cash point is not made usable for people who cannot stand. People who have disability, don't have brain legs, you can't access your money. We cannot vote if we are persons with disability. So participation is difficult for everybody with disability in the country, and your dignity is wasted.
The protest was followed by intense multi-platform media engagement.
Before the National Assembly went on break, there was issue on the bill. Section 38 and 45 of the bill need to be recrafted, to conform with existing law in Nigeria. And how are we going to achieve that? The legal department of the National Assembly, they were waiting for the National Assembly to resume so that they can be able to send this document to them and demand for these alterations around this particular section I mentioned. We discovered that because of the election and other issues, the National Assembly may not see this as an issue. They may not take it serious.
Not leaving anything to chance, the coalition of disability organizations decided to go spiritual by organizing an interdenominational prayer session on January 2019 for President Buhari to pass the bill into law. Later that same day, after years of struggle, lobbying and advocacy, the National Disability Rights Bill was passed into law by the President.
We're excited to appreciate the President for signing the Disability Bill into an act. Yesterday, the President signed the Disability Bill into an act. By this singular action, the reign of discrimination and harmful practices against people with disabilities in Nigeria has come to an end. The bill went further to also provide right to education, right to health, right to political participation, as well as a commission that will monitor compliance and, adherence to the provisions of this act.
Many people and groups worked alongside the Center for Citizens with Disabilities to ensure the Disability Rights Act, and the group is grateful for the efforts pulled together to achieve the historic feat. And though there are misgivings about its implementation, Mr. Anyele is confident it would be put to good use.
There are different sections of the law. The role of individual, role of organization, and role of government. In all these responsibilities, if you find yourself being abused, you are entitled to go to court. That one is standalone. Yeah. In terms of implementation of structures, if a person with disability wants to access your public building and you discover it's not accessible, you go to court. And the fines are there. There are fines you are going to pay to the individual until that environment is made accessible. So that is why there are penalties attached to it, ranging from 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, and 1 million. So people with disabilities are out to enjoy the benefits attached to this bill. And the beauty of it is that it creates opportunity for inclusion, access to education, up to secondary school, free, access to healthcare, mental health, free mental health services.
And though it took a long time, many failed attempts and tireless demands, efforts by rights groups like the Center for Citizens with Disabilities have paid off in no small measure in making PWDs in Nigeria feel more accepted. Attention is now on ensuring adherence to the dictates of the law.